Most people think hurting a Gemini is easy. They believe Gemini is light, playful, detached. They assume Gemini doesn't feel deeply because they don't show pain the way others do. That assumption is the first mistake. Because Gemini doesn't lack depth, they hide it behind intelligence. They laugh when they're processing. They talk when they're analyzing. They stay curious when they're actually protecting their heart. And when someone hurts a Gemini, the damage doesn't explode on the surface. It sinks, quietly, slowly, strategically. Gemini is ruled by Mercury, the planet of perception, language, thought, and awareness. So when you hurt a Gemini, you don't just hurt emotions, you disrupt their perception of reality. And that creates karma. Gemini doesn't react immediately because they need to understand before they respond. They replay words, they reframe moments, they test memories against intuition. They ask themselves questions no one hears. Was that intentional? Was I too forgiving? How long has this pattern existed? Who did I think this person was? And who are they actually showing me? That internal dialogue is where karma is born. Because Gemini doesn't forgive blindly. They forgive once, maybe twice, but always while observing. And once observation turns into clarity, the door begins to close. Most people never see it happening. They think Gemini is fine. They think the joke landed. They think the silence means peace. But Gemini isn't at peace. Gemini is calculating emotional truth. And here's something very important people misunderstand. Gemini doesn't punish people. They remove themselves from equations that no longer make sense. That's not cruelty. That's intelligence. When you hurt a Gemini, you force them to see reality without illusion. And once Gemini sees clearly, they cannot pretend anymore. They don't argue. They don't chase explanations. They don't demand apologies. They detach internally first. That internal detachment is subtle, but it's permanent. And karma responds immediately to internal shifts. Because karma isn't triggered by words, it's triggered by alignment. Once Gemini realigns their energy away from someone who hurt them, the universe adjusts the balance. Suddenly, the person who caused the pain starts feeling unsettled. They don't know why. They can't name it. They just feel off. That's because Gemini's energy is no longer buffering reality for them. Gemini often plays the role of translator, emotionally and mentally. They soften misunderstandings. They explain intentions. They excuse behavior others wouldn't. When that stops, raw truth enters, and raw truth is karmic. Another dangerous thing about hurting a Gemini is assuming they'll forget. They won't, but not because they're bitter. Gemini remembers patterns, not wounds. They remember how something happened. They remember when respect disappeared. They remember what changed inside them. And once a Gemini notices that their inner voice went quiet around you, that curiosity died, that excitement faded, they know something sacred was violated. And that realization creates a boundary even karma respects. Gemini doesn't block people immediately. They don't erase existence overnight. They simply stop investing soul. And soul is what made the connection powerful in the first place. Without it, everything feels empty. The conversations become shallow, the humor feels forced, the connection feels delayed, out of sync. That's not accidental. That's Gemini no longer carrying the emotional weight alone. Karma ensures that imbalance is felt. People often say Gemini is unpredictable. That's wrong. Gemini is responsive. They adapt to truth. So when you hurt a Gemini, you teach them something about you, and they learn fast. They learn where to stop explaining, where to stop giving chances, where to stop hoping. And karma loves lessons learned the hard way. Another layer people don't see is Gemini's intuition. Gemini senses energy before it becomes action. They notice tone shifts. They feel pauses. They read between words. So many times when someone hurts a Gemini, the Gemini already felt it coming. That doesn't make it hurt less. It makes it hurt deeper. Because betrayal hurts more when it confirms intuition. And once intuition is confirmed, Gemini doesn't question themselves again. They trust the signal. They trust the exit. and karma follows trust. Gemini's silence after being hurt is not weakness. It's discernment. They stop sharing thoughts. They stop inviting opinions. They stop opening internal doors. And the person who hurt them doesn't realize that silence is the final boundary. Once crossed, there is no return. Karma doesn't need Gemini to seek justice. The universe handles it naturally. Because when someone loses access to Gemini's mind, they lose perspective. When they lose Gemini's presence, they lose momentum. When they lose Gemini's curiosity, life becomes heavier. Gemini brings movement wherever they go. They bring questions, possibilities, expansion. Remove that, and stagnation sets in. That stagnation is karmic consequence, not punishment. Consequence, and Gemini doesn't feel guilty about it anymore because clarity removes guilt. At some point, Gemini realizes, I didn't ask for too much. I asked the wrong person, and that realization is liberation. From that moment on, Gemini stops revisiting the past. They don't romanticize what hurt them. They don't chase closure. They don't rewrite memories. They accept reality. And karma accelerates when acceptance replaces attachment. This is why hurting a Gemini is dangerous, not because they'll come after you, but because once they let go, nothing protects you from the truth anymore. And this is only the beginning. There is a moment, very specific, when a Gemini stops giving chances. It doesn't happen during the argument. It doesn't happen after the betrayal. It doesn't even happen when the pain is still fresh. It happens later, when the Gemini is alone, quiet, mentally revisiting everything without emotion attached anymore. That's when the shift occurs. Gemini reaches a conclusion, not an impulse. And once a Gemini concludes something, it becomes truth. This is the point of no return. From that moment on, the person who caused the pain is no longer seen through hope, but through understanding. And understanding is merciless. Gemini realizes exactly who you are, how you operate, and what you are capable of. They stop projecting potential. They stop imagining future versions of you. They see you as you are. And karma responds immediately to clarity. Because clarity is alignment with reality. That's why after hurting a Gemini, people often feel something strange happening in their lives. Things stall, communication breaks down, opportunities fade, connections feel off. It's not superstition. Gemini energy moves things forward. They open doors mentally and energetically. They connect ideas, people, timing. When you hurt a Gemini, you lose access to that current. And without momentum, life feels heavier. Another truth people don't like to hear. Gemini is often the emotional translator in relationships. They explain feelings. They bridge misunderstandings. They give words to what others can't articulate. When that role disappears, chaos begins. Suddenly, the person who hurt Gemini feels misunderstood everywhere. They struggle to express themselves. People misinterpret their intentions. That's karmic symmetry. You broke communication with a Gemini. Now communication breaks around you. Gemini never wishes harm, but the universe mirrors imbalance, and Gemini understands that better than most signs. This is why Gemini doesn't chase revenge. They trust timing. They trust cause and effect. They trust karma more than confrontation. Another layer of Gemini karma is emotional memory. Gemini doesn't store pain emotionally. They store it intellectually, which means they remember exactly what happened without distortion. No exaggeration, no denial, just facts. And facts are powerful. Because facts don't change when emotions fade. That's why once a Gemini detaches, they never fully reconnect the same way. You might get access. You might get conversation, you might even get laughter, but you'll never again reach the same depth. That depth is reserved for those who proved safe, and karma respects emotional boundaries. People often confuse Gemini's friendliness after being hurt as forgiveness. It's not. It's emotional sovereignty. Gemini can be kind without being open, present without being invested, polite without being vulnerable, and that difference changes everything. The person who hurt Gemini often starts craving the old version of them. The late-night conversations, the mental stimulation, the effortless connection. But that version no longer exists because Gemini evolves fast once a lesson is learned, and evolution leaves others behind. Karma isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It works silently, aligning people with the consequences of their actions. And Gemini understands that timing is more effective than reaction. Another dangerous mistake people make is assuming Gemini will explain why they left emotionally. They won't. Because once Gemini understands, explanation feels unnecessary. They don't owe clarity to those who created confusion. That's another karmic law. Clarity is a privilege. Gemini gives it generously until they don't. And once they stop, the silence teaches the lesson better than words ever could. At some point, Gemini realizes something deeply liberating. I didn't lose anything. I learned something. And that realization dissolves attachment completely. When attachment dissolves, karma accelerates. Because the universe no longer needs to slow things down for emotional processing. Everything moves faster. Gemini moves on mentally first, then physically, then energetically. And once Gemini's energy exits a space, that space feels colder, less alive, less inspired. Gemini brings lightness, curiosity, adaptability. Remove that, and the environment changes. That's why people feel the absence long after Gemini is gone. Not because Gemini was dramatic, but because Gemini was essential. There is also a spiritual layer to Gemini karma. Gemini operates between worlds, thought and intuition, logic and emotion. So when they release someone, they release them on multiple levels at once. Mind, heart, energy, that's rare. And when someone is released completely, karma has free access. No resistance, no interference, just balance. This is why people who hurt Gemini often experience repetitive lessons. The same situation in different faces, the same pattern with new people, until they understand what they did wrong. Karma is patient. Gemini is already gone. And here's the final truth. You should never hurt a Gemini, not because they are fragile, but because they are aware. Aware enough to walk away without noise, aware enough to let karma speak, aware enough to never return to what disrespected them. Gemini doesn't close doors emotionally, they close chapters mentally, and mental closure is final. Once a Gemini moves forward, they don't look back, not with regret, not with longing, only with understanding. And understanding is the most powerful form of detachment. So if a Gemini ever gave you access to their mind, their thoughts, their inner world, that was trust. If you broke it, karma noticed, and it's already working. If this message resonated with you, make sure to like this video. It helps this channel reach more Geminis who need to hear this truth. Subscribe for more deep, real, and powerful insights about Gemini energy. And don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss what's coming next. Comment below. Have you ever experienced this kind of karmic shift with a Gemini, or as one? Your story might help someone else understand theirs.